J.A. Yeah, crown me king, tell them get it.
Shalom, and welcome to another edition here on the Genesis 49's page, where we say no to vague interpretation and we give thorough breakdowns.
Shalom, and welcome to another edition here on the Genesis 49ers page, where we say no to vague interpretations and we give thorough breakdowns. Today's topic is the Black Britons, ancient Britain, the black people of Britain, okay, of ancient Britain, of antiquity. Now, a lot of people watching this video that's not familiar with the material or familiar with the ancient epochs of Britain are probably looking at the title like, oh, that's crazy. White people always have lived there. And the only reason you come to that conclusion because you grew up in a white supremacist system where anything outside of Africa is white in your mind. But we're here to take away the vague interpretations and give you thorough breakdowns and give you the truth and the history regarding this. Because you're not going to be taught this in school, okay? You're not going to be taught this in college. But we're going to give you the truth, okay? I'm going to fight against what Bloomberg has spread within our communities, which is the saying African is nigger and nigger is African. So anything that's dealing with a dark-skinned man and woolly hair has to be an African, no matter what. That's what we've been taught. I'm going to hew that down. I'm going to thoroughly hew that down. So today's topic is Black Britain, a legacy of the Negroes. Let's get right into it, family. First slide, the Moors. In Africa, the Moors continue to be a leading power and to no little extent India. Also, they dominated the Mediterranean and the North Atlantic and plundered the coast of Western Europe and the British Isles. Now, that's from Nature Knows No Color Line by J.A. Rogers, a profound scholar, page 69. Now, we know these people ruled in Europe because to the right you can see Negroes and heraldry. Heraldry is for ruling families, okay? So they ruled, and guess what? Mauritania was full of Jews. I covered that in my last video, Refuting Garfield, and I got future videos that's going to bring out these Jews that were inhabiting the western tip of Africa in ancient Jewish societies that was in Mauritania, okay? We just had some Jews that converted into Islam out of fear, and some just wanted to do it to amalgamate within the system and rise into high positions and offices within the system of the Moors. We understand that. So you had Jewish Moors and you had Islamic Moors. But that's for another video. I just want you to key in and hone in on the fact that these Moors were ruling in Europe. Okay? And they ruled the British Isles. Moors, they even conquered and ruled parts of Scotland. David McRitchie, an eminent British archaeologist, says, so late as the 10th century, 3 of these provinces were wholly black. And the supreme ruler of them became for a time the paramount king of the transmarine Scotland. We see one of the black people, the Moors of the Romans, in the persons of the king of Alban of the 10th century. History knows him as Kenneth, sometimes Dub, and as Nigger, which means black, and Dub means black. Kenneth the Dub means Kenneth the Black. And he was one of the prominent kings of Scotland. Okay, and that's written throughout the annals of history. We know this. And that's also Nature Knows No Color Line, page 69 to page 70. I'm going to be quoting him a lot throughout this presentation, and to the right you can see an image courtesy of the last king of Scotland, okay, which is a movie based in Africa, but it's just the title and the depiction of a king of Scotland was being black. I had to put it in the presentation with Forrest Whitaker playing as that king. Next slide. Dub. We know as a historical fact that nigger, or L-dub, has reigned over certain black divisions of our islands. Now, I want to stop there because the reason I'm saying nigger or neger, that's the proper pronunciation of that word because it's a Latin word. In Latin, N and I will make the ni sound, not the ni sound. It will make the ni because the I makes the E sound in Latin. So it'll be nigger or nigger. Okay, so L-dub has reigned over certain black divisions of our islands and probably white divisions also, and that a race known as the sons of the black succeeded him in history. Welsh traditions, he said, now remember this is the 10th century, so not 900 circa era, right? If a nation known as the sons of the black preceded him, okay, you have black people ruling in Britain for a long period of time, a long epoch of time. That's why a lot of you can't believe that King James was black. In the Jacobean era, that was black people ruling. You can't believe it because you haven't been taught this history that black people were all through Europe before Israelites came there as well. Because what you're going to learn is the Japhetic children that were throughout Europe were originally dark skinned. That's why when you look at the earliest depiction of a negroid person, and I covered this in my video, Japhet is black, it's found in the Mediterranean. The earliest depiction of a negroid person outside of Africa is found in the Mediterranean. In Europe, the Etruscans, right, the ancient Greeks, they're all depicted as being black in Neolithic times. That's going past 3000, before 3000 BC, around that era. So subscribe to Genesis 49ers because we're going to keep giving you these facts and historical gems. So it says, in that a race known as the sons of the black succeeded him in history. Welsh traditions, he says, tells also of these black people in the legends in the history of the Scottish Highlands are both witnesses to the existence of a purely black people there. And that's from Nature Knows No Colorline by J.A. Rogers, page 70. So you had a history of black people, legends of black people living there, and black people continue to live and rule in these islands, the British Isles, right? You had a continuation, if you will, a continuity, if you will. So black people always was there. It wasn't until after colonial times and after Edomite Byzantine empires, because the Byzantine Empire was once a all-black empire, but then you had Isaurians invade and, you know, interrupt the continuity of that kingdom. And that's where you start seeing the pale people coming into that kingdom. Moving on. So Eber, it says, what we do know also is that the Phoenicians, a Negroid people, did mine tin in Cornwall, that the Egyptians went to Britain before the Romans. Gerald Massey gives abundant proof, including Egyptian words and ancient British languages. The Solors, or Western Britons, mentioned by Tacitus of the 1st century as having dark skins and usually curly hair, were very likely of Phoenician or Egyptian descent. Nature Knows No Colorline, page 71. And to the right, you see more Negro imagery, okay, dealing with Europe. Now, we're going to get to the actual quote of Tacitus, the historian, 1st century historian. And it's dealing with the Solors. It says the swarthy faces, swarthy means dark. Okay, when you see the word swarthy, it means dark. And that's also where you get the surname Stuart from. When we talk about King James, he was of the Stuart family, which denotes dark skin, swart. Okay, the swarthy faces of the Solors, the curly quality in general of their hair and the position of Spain opposite their shores, attest to the passions of the Iberian on old days and the occupation by them of these districts. And that's in the Annals of Tacitus. Book 11, Chapter 2, translated by M. Hutton. To the right, you can see coinage of Iberian Negroes. This is undeniable. You had dark-skinned people, black people, if you will, because there's no such thing as a race of black people. The whole world was black at one point, and that consisted of different races. Again, a continuity of black rulership in the British Isles. Tacitus wrote about these dark-skinned people living in Britain, which we teach that the word British is Hebrew, because Barit means covenant in Hebrew. Aish means man. So if you say you're British, you're a man of the covenant. Moving on. Welsh. Ancient Welsh folk tales certainly do mention black people, unmistakably Negroes, in the history of Peredur and the Mabinogion. The blacks mentioned therein might be Salors. Another ancient Welsh poem, Gawad Lud y Mawar, tells of a robbery between white and black. And that's Nature Knows No Color Line, page 71. So we can clearly give historical references of black, dark-skinned people living within these areas, Scotland and the British Isles, to attest to it, of a black continuity. Next slide. Moors. Mac Ritchie adds that the legends in the history of the Scottish Highlands are both witnesses of the existence of a purely black people there. Boswell and Dr. Johnson saw the descendants of these black people when they visited Scotland in his journey to the Hebrides. September 1st, 1773, Boswell wrote of one clan, the McCraes. Some were as black and wild in their appearance as any American savage whatsoever. So he said these people were black, and this was in 1773. Martin, who had visited these western islands 80 years before Boswell, said of the people of Jura, black of complexion. Of Islay, general blacks, and of Iran, generally brown, and some of black complexion. The use of brown for some shows very clearly that when he had said black, he meant black, as in very dark, right? Also, Robert Knox in 1850 mentions a small colony of mulattoes living in Minch, Moor, Scotland, the offspring of Negroes and white women. And that's Nature Knows No Color Line, page 79. J.A. Rogers put in that work, man. He was a real scholastic teacher. He was a scholar. Not what you're seeing on Sonetta today. Those are not scholars. They admit a lot of the knowledge and a lot of the sources. They don't even deal with information like this. But to the right, you have King Edward III of England. He ruled circa 1400s. And they depict him as being a Negro. In the 1400s, can you believe it? Let's go. Next slide. Dance. It says, also still another proof of early Negroes in England is that the Moorish dance, English national dance, is of an African origin. It might have been brought over by the Moors with the Romans, and it seems certainly by the Moors with William the Conqueror in 1066. Sir John Hawkins, an earlier authority on music, says it is indisputable that this dance was the invention of the Moor. Its Negro origin is further seen in that white dancers blacken their faces to dance it. The Moresca, says Paul Nettle, was originally a dance of the Negroes or Moors and the pantomime of one or more Negroes in black face. Nature Knows No Color Line, page 82. And we get the image from a YouTube video to the right of them actually practicing this to this day. To commemorate who? The Moorish people that ruled those different locales. My channel here is built to edify and to educate you, brothers. And this is what we're going to continue to do here on Genesis 49ers. Dealing more with the Moors, it says Siebermacher's Wappen book of 88 volumes already mentioned has a great number of Negroes, some of them with crowns and others as cardinals and archbishops. So I'm going to stop there. They had crowns. What does that mean? Coronation was involved, meaning they had became kings of these different locales and different city-states and different governments. So they had crowns and cardinals and archbishops, meaning they were heads over churches and religious institutions. Meaning this is not the laity we're talking about. We're talking about the kings. We're talking about the heads of the society. The clergymen. These were all black people. With these Negroes and German nobility. These Negroes are what? German nobility. Now, a lot of people talk about German. When they think about German, they think of a white person, a Nordic, as they say. But we have a history and a continuity of black people ruling Germany as well. The evident Negro strand in Queen Charlotte Sophia, consort of George III of England, who was a German princess, might be explained. She was Negro, but she was a German princess. Showing you can't judge people's race based on their locality. That's what's wrong with DNA. DNA is a very circular argument. They judge the people by the place and the place by the people. You can't do that because people migrate, people rule, people take over different cities and move people out. I.e., what happened when the king of Assyria came into Northern Kingdom? He moved a lot of our people out and brought them into Assyria and the cities of the Medes. So you can't just go off of land, locality, and stuff like that. You can't base everything off of that. You need records. You need archives to prove what race or ethnicity someone is. You can't just go off of a magic trick called DNA. Don't be fooled by that, brothers. It says, who was a German princess might be explained. Negroes, some with crowns, also appeared in the coat of arms of German and other European cities and provinces. Alt-Oting of Bavaria has a black Madonna. Coburg has the Negro Saint Maurice. And in Kemmelsberg, Mark Fletcham, Austria, a jet black Negro as Saint Peter, holding the keys of the kingdom. So they recognized that Peter was a Negro. Now, what race and nationality was Peter? He was a Jew. And the early depictions of him were black. A jet black Negro. In the text, he is called a Moor. That is German then for Negro. So they recognize these people as Negro. And like in my video, the Sephardic Negro Jews, the picture for that video is actually a stained glass picture of Daniel, and that's in Germany, by the way, and he's depicted as being black. So when you hear about Hitler knowing that the Jews were Negro, he really didn't have to go that far and do too much research, because the stained glass and frescoes and arts and statues teaches him that in his own city, in his own state. So that's from Nature's Knows No Color line by J.A. Rogers, the profound scholar. And that's page 93. If you're watching this channel and you have not purchased this book yet, this video should behoove you to purchase this book. He puts that work in. He gives you the scholastic evidence to back these things. See, here on Genesis 49ers, we don't just buy books to claim we own books. We buy books to get the meat out and deliver it to the people. We read these books. Your book should have highlights, notes. You should be reading these books and bringing it to the forefront. They didn't make these books to conceal this knowledge. They made these books to expound upon this knowledge and give it to our people. Next slide. More for Negro continued to be in general use in England until at least the 18th century. Nathaniel Bailey, compiler of the first English dictionary, has more. Nature Knows No Color Line, page 73. You can see a bust of a blackamoor to the right. Let's deal with race. This is Claudia Rufinia, and those who are not privy who Claudia Rufinia was, she was a basically an English princess, a princess of England, right? And her son became the quote-unquote first bishop of Rome, right? First century. This is first century information, and this is what they wrote about it. Claudia Rufinia raised beneath the sun that shines on Britain's dark cerulean race. So this attests to what? That Britain had dark inhabitants, and cerulean is like a bluish color, a dark bluish color. So these people were black living in Britain in the 1st century AD. So Anglo-Israel by William Henry Poole, page 258 is where you can find that quotation, and it's translated from the Latin. Next slide, and final slide, because you have to understand something. For all you people that look at Europe as being always white, like it's been white since the beginning of time, even though we have abundance of evidence to disprove that. They are finding negroid skeletons and skulls that mainstream scientists are claiming that are the oldest bones in Europe. So we got to step our scholarship up. What's the slogan of the channel? Genesis 49ers, we say no to vague interpretations and we give thorough breakdowns. Professor Lipp says, long before Europe set forth her emissaries in history to discover and capture the colored world, that world had pent the white man in his own land. The age of discovery, after all, but the bursting of the chain which the colored people had put around the white. So he's attesting to what? Professor Lips is attesting to that this world was ruled and dominated by people of color for an epoch of time, until what we know as the Renaissance is when they fully was able to take that chain that we had on them off of their necks and free themselves. That includes Britain, England, Germany. We was all over those locales and ruling, okay? For an epoch of time. And that's Nature Knows No Color Line, page 222. We read these books, brothers. Read your books. Take notes. They have jewels in them. We need to bring them out and put them on the forefront. Habakkuk 3:2 says, O Lord, I have heard thy speech and was afraid. O Lord, revive thy work in the midst of the years. In the midst of the years make known, and wrath remember mercy. In the Middle Ages, the Lord had mercy on us. He revived his work, which is his people, and allowed us to rule and reign. In the Middle Ages, what is known as the Middle Ages. And we went through Europe and ruled. We went through Africa and ruled. Mauritania, the ancient Songhai empires, Gaio. If you look at these old maps, it has the exiled Jews located in Africa on the west coast. Why is that there? We ruled these different localities, okay, and different city-states within the Middle Ages. Now, that was corruption. I might make a video about that, the historians interrupting that and introducing whitewashing of our images and stuff of that nature that interrupted that around the 4th century, then back 7th, 8th century, 9th century, and wars continued after that. But this has been Genesis 49ers. We brought out the truth behind the ancient black Britons and of Scotland. I pray that you took notes. Like the video, subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet, share the video on the social media platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and let's get this truth out there, man. Genesis 49ers. Signing off.